Peace and love, everybody. We are back with another episode, Slaves to Sovereign podcast, with your hosts, Paige L. Bay and King L. Bay. And we are here today to talk to you all about a plethora of things. We have put up on Spotify and YouTube that if you have any questions about anything that we are discussing, to please answer or please ask those questions so that we can answer them in the podcast. I want to thank you all for subscribing to our YouTube channel as well, Paige and King, the Slaves to Sovereign podcast on Spotify. King, I know people have had some questions for you, but I want to know your opinion on this video. I want to share this video with you. 1 second. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen so that the audience can see this as well. Let's see here. How do you share screen on here?
You go
Hold on.
to present,
Oh, got it.
and
Present.
then say share screen.
Yes, got it. Thank you. Okay. Right. Okay. So we're gonna go here, and can you see it now?
Mm, no, did you share it?
No way.
You got
Let's
to
see.
hit share screen, and then
Okay, I see what it did. Got it.
your browser.
All right. Do you see this?
Yes, I can.
So this has got a lot of New Yorkers a bit discombobulated because they're like, what is this? You know? And I've been telling people that this is the new world that we're coming into. Like we've talked about how even they brought in the robo lawyer into the court and
Right.
they had issues with that. um so how do we prevent people from even having to be subjected to something such as a automated automated system such as that
Um,
where
you got to have opt out provisions in your contracts. People
Mhm,
got to learn how to contract, right?
mhm,
So just like any other contract, they tell you, do you want to opt out? So the world of contracts dealing with that particular thing is it's not going to pull out a gun or anything. It's collecting data. So when you in there, your biometrics is being filtered into a system. The way you look, the way everything. So you got to have a contract. The government can't intervene on private rights or religious rights. So based on your religious rights and that you can object, the government will have to then erase or cannot, even if they got it, they can't use none of that against you. It'll automatically be thrown out if you understand how to go about being a part of what we're doing in this institution. We can then, put those type of things in the contract so people can understand how to safeguard their rights. And they have to be sincere. It has to be something that can be authenticated, that can be verified and used as evidence in the court. Everything that we're dealing with is a form of contract. You got to remember there's an implied consent. What is the implied consent, or what they call applied performance in contract law? Just by mere participation. If you just start participating, they're going to, hey, you consented. It's just like if we playing basketball and you go out there and you say, okay, I want to join in. Could I play with y'all? We got some rules, right? They're gonna say, okay, you gotta abide by the rules. You volunteered and you just started participating. Now these rules apply to you during the game. So we have to understand these things. So contracts is the name of the game, and a lot of people they think that everything is about a trust, but a trust is within your relationship. Who is all in the trust? I can't make somebody have a trust relationship with me. You understand what I'm saying? There has to be evidence of some things put into contracts, and things can be presented and represented to the court, and that's how we do everything. And we have to understand when we look at everything is um, everything is dealing with contracts. Y'all have to remember the country is bankrupt, so there's only two things going on. There's nothing but a tax and a insurance scheme. That's it.
And this is really important too that you all hone in on what King is saying, because the thing is that you do only have one or two options. You have the option to choose how you want to contract or be subject to these rules. Because and I was just talking to my buddy about this, who's in the armed forces, and he was like, "Oh yeah, it's coming because these robots don't have empathy. If it's time to shoot, they shoot. They don't have you don't have they we think about what we have to do. They won't. You see, if you hungry and you want to go to the grocery store and get you something to eat, well, there's no empathy there. It's like you either are registered
You went out in my microphone. I didn't hear you. That might be me. I'm sorry. I can't hear you.
I think that may be me, y'all. I think that might be me. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Or you may have a contract set up in place, to offset that, where you are not subject to that. So that's very important that, we understand how to contract, and that you all are listening to what King is saying with contracting, and the importance of knowing that what we're talking about is it's not sovereign citizen stuff. Let me just say that. This is not sovereign citizen stuff at all. This is legitimately knowing how to come in and out of the jurisdiction, how to conduct yourself, right? So that's very important. Um,
I
other
like to
th-
use. I like to say this before. It's how you want people to treat you, and how you want you to treat them. I like to use the word treatment. When you go to the doctor, you get a treatment. How are you being treated? This is to come from the word treaty, so that we can understand that it's all about how you want to be treated.
yes, got it. I want to share something else with you too, King, because let me go ahead and share my screen because I want people to see this list. Okay. All right. Can you see my screen?
It's loading. I can see it. It's kind of small. Let me see if I
Okay. It's the, let me
lower it
zoom
up.
in.
I need to lower it up.
I'm gonna go ahead and zoom in real quick. This is the specially designated nationals and block persons list.
Okay.
And so I was reading, the notable people that have been sanctioned. Um, but they've also, if you've watched the news in, the past 2 years, um, a lot of groups and people are being labeled as sovereign citizens, are being labeled as um, terrorists, domestic terrorists. And slowly but surely, these kinds of lists are getting longer because um, people have a legitimate they have legitimate feelings as to how they feel about certain things going on with the system, but they are not following um, certain rules, if that makes sense. They don't know how to conduct themselves. And so they're being labeled as these things. And I would like to know your stance on the importance of us coming in peace with how we contract, not being labeled as paper terrorist, um, and knowing the difference between I guess I don't want to say speech terrorism. I don't even know if that's a word, or um, it just slipped my mind. Knowing the difference between speech terrorism and religious speech, right? Religious speech. So I would like to know what your take is on religious speech. What do you think about that? Like what can you say? What can't you say?
Or
Etc.
okay, so we got to remember, religious speech cannot be it's unencumbered. So you it, it's how you targeting and who you targeting to, right? Um, you can't come into a public venue and disturb the peace. You got to understand there's a law for disturbing the peace. So when you get people up riled, that's in a public venue, that's a part of that public trust, that public relationship. You got to understand who are you designating this to. So, um, you don't have the right to come in and start taking and interfering with public policy because they have rights too. If it's about your congregation and the people that you're part of, that's independent contractors that may be contracting with the United States and they're under contract, you have a right to speak to them and direct your speaking to them, your religious speech. You can always publicize it where you can put it out there in the airways, but it's you have to understand how this work, and you have to let them know it has to be in a POA that you are. This is not an attempt to overthrow or interfere with any public policy. This is an attempt to bring notice to certain things and bring certain awareness to certain things. It's for entertainment and education purposes only. So they understand that, what is this for? This is religious, rhetoric or religious thoughts in which now you're trying to mold your particular congregation. So we just have to be mindful of government, and we have to understand what government is in relationship to you, in relationship to the things that you come in contact with.
Ew. Wonderful. Thank you for that answer. Um, and this also goes into what I wanted to show you earlier, talk about earlier, with how France has banned the pro Palestinian protests, and we can see that happening also in the U.S., right, where people may have or people may come together peacefully, and they may express their opinions on the protection of Muslims, right? Because we're Muslims too. And how, even going into this, like just what you said, how can one express um, their stances without being labeled anti-Semitic or without being labeled a terrorist or going against a certain group? Because that's very important. People are getting their platforms banned. People are not able to do certain things. They may be on these lists, they may be surveillance. And so my interest is, in protecting people from knowing, you know, where to stop, right? Knowing where to stop, knowing that you can protect your folks, but not to a certain degree. What is your opinion on that?
Okay. So once again, we got to understand private rights and public rights.
Mm-hmm.
What platform are you doing these things on?
People, I want to say people were in the public streets.
Okay. So when you're doing things publicly, you get what I'm saying? You got to
Mm-hmm.
understand there's going to be backlash because you in the public street, you in the public trade zone. So
Mm-hmm.
what you got to do is you got to do things privately.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what do? You have things within your congregation. You get a bunch of people together and they understand what to do. And then how do you deal with government? You send them things confidentially in a conf- in a confidential manner. You send them an
Mm-hmm.
envelope that's sealed directly where it's not on a public platform. But
Mm-hmm.
you got to understand how to move because you got to understand what is your relationship to everything that you touch. Is this a public platform? Is this a public venue? Is this a public area? What who bought and paid for these things? You see what I'm saying?
Got
So
it. Yep.
you got to understand that. So
So even still, right? Say for instance, this because I know that a lot of indigenous folks feel as though just because they've read the um, Indigenous Rights Act, the American Declaration for the Rights on Indigenous People, those, you have the OAS one, and you also have the United Nations ones. And I know in one of the documents, they talk about the sacred sites, right? And some indigenous people have argued that all of our sites are sacred sites, including the public streets, right? Is that true? That they have the right and the authority over the land if they decide to congregate together and speak up against injustices that could potentially be happening on the land. What are your thoughts on that?
once again, we got to understand what's going on. So
Mm-hmm.
when we're dealing with the institution or the machine or government. It's not about what you say. It's about what you can prove. You got to prove what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
If these are sacred sites, where's the evidence? Where's the historical evidence? Where is everything? Where's the plots? Where's the treaties? Where's the other contracts that you can show that you have these rights, or have these
Mm-hmm.
rights been removed? Have these contracts been destroyed? Because there's archives has been destroyed. What can you prove? What can we're dealing in contracts. So if there were treaties in place that said these lands were sacred and that nation had rights to those plots that was being supposed to be governed by that treaty and built um, and providing how that their relationship supposed to be between those plots, those lands, then you have to show it. So a lot of people, our problem is that we don't understand what's going on. So we go out and we do anything out of frustration. But it's time to recalibrate your mind and understand how to deal with these things and change the system slowly by understanding that everything in this world is dealing with contract. That's your God given right. That's your unlimited right. Unalienable right. It's unalienable. Nobody can tell you how to contract, where to contract, when to contract, and how to contract. So you have to protect that. And you have to understand how to start moving. The pen is mightier than the sword.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree with that. Thank you for that, because I know a lot of people, they feel as though they can just take over everything, even the public roadways, and we can't do it from an individual level. um, just like what King is saying, we have to think cognitively about it. Where are the contracts in place that says that these are sacred sites? Yeah, I know we were here first. I get it. I get it. All the land was ours. But there's also treaties that also said that they had the right to be here too. And that has to be talked about and established, and we have to do this from a community level where the institution can also communicate with the machine. A machine can communicate with a machine, but if it's a living being with a machine, there's going to be some kind of uh, I don't want to say friction, but there will be some misunderstandings for sure, and
Well, let
abuses
me
could. Oh, go ahead.
let me say you don't have any leverage
Yeah.
when you. So we're talking about leveraging. This is like leveraging your credit, business leverage. You don't have any. You don't have any leverage. You don't have any way to convince or make somebody move in a particular capacity because you don't have nothing that they need.
Mm.
We got to start thinking different. We got to become resourceful. When you look at the IRS, they call everyone human resources. When you go to your job, you have a human resource division or department. You are the resource. You don't know it. You don't understand the power you have. So you get treated accordingly due to a contract that you signed, and you don't even understand how much power you have. So we keep trying to do everything from an individual standpoint, and you're not moving a brick wall. You're not moving a mountain. You understand? It takes force, right? How can you move a mountain? How can you take force? You have to be a force to be reckoned with. And that's what people are not doing. Oh, I'm gonna do the secure party creditor process. I'm gonna do but you're not building nothing where you have any force, where you have millions and millions of people in your congregation that you have put together. Y'all understand what's going on, and y'all start doing certain things where now you have leverage. Do
Mm.
you know if you could just control the labor force, if you had an international labor union or if you had a domestic labor union that everybody was under, that you could have controlled the labor force and even the playing field? Like, now we got these labor laws. Now they under contract, they under they ain't got nothing to do with your public contract. They still got to honor this private contract. They can't do that. You know how much work would have got done through a contract? You know, you could have forced some stuff through Congress.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, it's good stuff, King. I also just saw that I mean there's been the United Autos workers their contract. I know that as of today they said United Auto Workers have shut down Ford's uh SF, biggest plant globally in Kentucky, with 8,700 union members going on strike and halting production of their bestseller, which is the Ford Super Duty pickup. When you come together and one party does not honor the contract, everybody walk off the job. And now it's like, okay, when you got a machine with a machine, now we can negotiate. How do y'all want to be treated? Because our bestseller is not being produced. If it's not being produced, we don't make any fiat notes. You see what I'm saying? We don't make anything. So, just like what you're saying, we have to come together and create something that can have leverage. Right now, we don't have any leverage. You know what I mean? Um, and so that's why the institution is set up. I want to go into what you were talking about what we talked about earlier about contract liens. Contract liens. I'm pulling this up right now so I can share the screen so that you're able to see it on my end. Give me 1 second. Contractual lien. All right, everybody, I'm going to go ahead and share screen, and then we can read this off. So for the people that's listening on Spotify, you all will know what we're looking at. Okay, this is on Cornell Law School's website, contractual lien. A contractual lien is a name for a category of liens that stem from contracts and do not depend on the common law or statutes for their existence. A contractual lien is essentially a contract that gives a security interest in property to one of the parties involved. One example would be a mortgage. And some insist that a contractual lien should not be called a lien at all because a true lien should arise without the consent of the property owner. Still, others argue that the concept of contractual liens add value to the discussion about law. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, I love this. Right. So I like contractual liens because it tell you that they're out of the common law range and the statutory law. So when we're dealing in contracts liens, how to develop a contract in a lien is in the language. And what I love about that you can, if you're going to use the UCC, you can then have the license holder, which is a bank or any institution. They when you file that, they have to agree as the licensor because you're supposed to have a Series 7's license to adopt and abide by this. It's a part of the contract. So now you got the bank who's a licensor, right? That agreed that they're going to be the holder of such this as a requirement for enforcement of the contract lien within the UCCs. And then what do? You take Eagle 9 insurance, right? UCC insurance, and you insure the contract. So if anything go bad, everybody get made whole again, right? So these are developments that a lot of people are not talking about because they don't understand the intricate details. I tell people the devil is in the details. So when you really understand how to evolve yourself through contracts, you move better. Now you looking at everything that you do. This is why when you get with us, we have contract negotiators. We look through contracts, we see the language, we ask, okay, what do this mean before we sign it? If it's not defined in the terms, right, then that's an undefinable term. And nobody can, it's if it's a term that's unconscionable, then that term has to be, or the word has to be severed from the contract. It has no force of law. And a lot of people don't understand that. They don't know how to present these arguments to the court. But this is why you have to have terms and conditions. I'm only going to accept this under these conditions. It's called a conditional acceptance. But you have to have terms. Terms is your uh, biblical or your manuscript or your terms that your definitions in which you rely on to determine the interpretation of the contract. You don't have terms and conditions, then what do you have? So if you're going to use it, then it has to be in common language that both parties agree. You got to have some type of interpretation clause that both party understands, some type of mutual agreement clause in there. It's other language, trigger language that's needed in these contracts that most people do not have the wherewithal that's needed in these contracts to have it have force.
Got it. Got it. Now, I know that here it says that a contractual lien should not be a lien at all because a true lien should arise without the consent of the property owner. A contractual lien would be more so suitable. Let me ask you this: would it be so more so suitable to do these without? Because I know that putting a lien on someone else's property can cause some kind of damage, right? And so many people, the relationship can kind of be soured if it's not communicated that a person puts a lien on another person's property. Would a contractual lien be then more suitable, like putting a lien on the contract of a mortgage versus a lien on the actual physical property of the house? Does that make sense? Is it something similar to that?
A contract lien, right? They tell you
Mm-hmm.
like a mortgage, right?
Okay.
So when you talk about a true lien, so we're going to talk about franchising or licensing, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you have a franchise, right, agreement, right, it's a lien automatically in there. If you look at Congress, right, and they're talking about things in a permanent nature or general nature, they're telling you in acquiescence through their legislative body, there's a lien on this. It's under a franchise that's permanent. It's irremovable. You can't take that and move that around in any kind of way. It's permanent. It's sit there. So you got to understand what a franchise is, and it's dealing with a like a McDonald's. If, all their products and everything automatically have a lien on it. It's a franchise. So they put you on notice. Hey, this is franchise lien on all of these products. So that's incorporated into what's going on. The owner has the right to secure his interest in the property, but well as a contract lien, you have two parties in there, and they're securing an interest in something. So when we're talking about licensing and stuff like that, a license is another form of lien that can be used, and you can talk about how the license and have the lien under the franchise and all of that different stuff, those components, or you can lease something to someone for uh, specific amount of time. So, like if you look at all of your licensing and leases, what happens in a license? Like if you got a product, you have what? Everything has an expiration date, and you have to what? Renew your license like a driver's license. To have a 4-year expiration date, you have to renew it to continuously volunteer to participate under that contract. When you lease, right, you lease your apartment, you can have it for a year, and then it might go into a month-to-month lease. So there's always an expiration date on everything, or it can be considered or looked at as servitude, depending on it. But when you're looking at copyright material, it has a permanent lien on it because it's yours. You created it, and anybody who wants to use it have to get your permission. And that permanent lien never goes anywhere because it's your particular thing that you created in that particular instance. So you have to understand that the dynamics of the relationship to or associated with a thing to determine how you can utilize licensings and liens or any form of lien associated with a thing, especially if you created it, like a patent, a copyright, a trademark. Those are permanent in nature that you can always have and always be forever remembered for that. And it can then, after a certain time, even with a copyright or certain patents or certain things, after a while, is then goes is owned by the public if you don't know how to pull it out the jurisdiction and then repatent it. Everything after a while it gets owned by the government. So you have to understand what you're doing because the government give you permission to do certain things, and you have to understand these laws. Because after a while, so many years, it's owned by it falls into the government lap, and they own or
Mm,
control it.
okay. You did mention contempt of Congress a few minutes ago. I'm gonna go ahead and read this, and I want to know your thoughts on this too. This is also on the Cornell Law School website, y'all, law.cornell.edu for those that are listening on Spotify. Contempt of Congress. Contempt of Congress is when an individual intentionally interferes with congressional action. Congress has the power to restrain such individuals from interfering with its actions. It is a form of contempt, similar to contempt of court. Congress's ability to hold individuals in contempt who interfere with its duties is considered an implied power of the legislature. The U.S. Supreme Court summarizes this principle in the 1917 case Marshall versus Gordon, stating, in virtue of the grant of legislative authority, there would be a power implied to deal with contempt insofar as authority or as that the authority was necessary to preserve and carry out the legislative authority given. That is, although the federal constitution does not explicitly provide for congressional power to hold individuals in contempt, such power is considered implied because without it, Congress could not effectively carry out its duties. Historically, Congress relied on British parliamentary precedent and generally found individuals to be in contempt for attempting to bribe congressmen or for refusing to answer congressional inquiries. For example, in 1795, Congress held Robert Randall in contempt, referencing British parliamentary practice, and held him in custody for about a week for attempting to bribe several representatives to vote to extinguish Indian land titles. Currently, actions for which individuals can be held in contempt of Congress are largely a matter of statutory law and focus mostly on when individuals refuse to appear or give testimony for a congressional investigation or hearing. The U.S. Supreme Court Watkins v. United States confirmed congressional power to issue subpoenas, stating that all citizens have a duty to cooperate with the Congress in its efforts to obtain the facts needed for intelligent legislative action, and that they must respond to subpoenas and testify. Federal law penalizes individuals who refuse to respond to congressional inquiries, as 2 USC subsection 192 states that any person who is summoned before Congress who willfully makes default or who have appeared refuses to answer any question pertinent to the question under inquiry shall be guilty of a misdemeanor and may be subject to a fine and imprisoned if convicted. What are your thoughts on that?
So we got to understand how everything is formed, is formulated. So when we're talking about a lot of people, I break this down. There's two areas. It's dealing with contempt and fraud. These are the criminal aspects when you break a statute or something like that. Um, the state or the government and the federal, they're saying, hey, you volunteer and you're under this implied performance. You have been operating in the public and they're seeing your transactions. Social security number, you're doing all of these public acts, you're getting food stamps, you getting tax returns, and you're doing all of these things and the government is saying, hey, you're doing all of this stuff. So now they're pulling you into the jurisdiction, and and now they imply through your performance. It's called implied performance. This is why government get implied consent due to what your actions are doing. So they treat you according to your actions as associated with your activities that you're involved with. So when you understand what's going on under these congressional contempts, under these congressional acts, you have to understand, like, what is my relationship with everything. And once you understand your relationship with everything, you better can facilitate how you need to be thinking with this. Do I need to come in contact with it? Do I need to create a intermediary or institution between me and this thing so that I can communicate and relate to this object, and how these two, how I can move through this entity and have no harm, I be held harmless in relationship to this object, and there's insurance put out so no one is, if anything happens, everybody is made whole. So it's all about understanding and creating contracts once again, and understanding how to build your relationship not just with other institutions or other individuals, but also with objects.
Got it. So I do have a question though, right? When we formulate contracts with the religious institution, there are also other contracts that a person um, or a living being may have with the uh, United States government. And so I want to know, how does one go about terminating those contracts with the United States government, and especially like if those forms are copyrighted, right? I know the UCC process and secure party creditor process, people will say, well, you need to fill out this form and you need to fill out that form, but that is considered uh, United States property, right? So how do you terminate that contract with or without going into it? Is there a way to terminate that contract without having to fill out that form, specific form?
So, the first thing I want you to understand and remember, there's not a contract that you can't either renegotiate or terminate
Okay.
or rescind, either or. So, um, there's nothing. There could be penalties associated with it, but it's not a contract that you can't renegotiate or terminate. So when you're looking at these contracts with the United States and try to terminate these contracts, the United States can't keep you in a contract because most of the stuff you're in is voluntary. So what do? You could just contract out. You can say, well, they tell you what to do if you want to contract with something else or another institution or whatever. All you have to do is just say, okay, I'm under this new contract, and under this new contract, I'm prohibited to do this. So now you can show a relationship between you and the United States. Say, I can no longer do this because I'm under this religious order, and it prohibits me to do certain acts. So, or you could just rescind everything. I try to tell people it's up to you how you want to do it. It's based upon your ability to understand, but you can simply, if you contract in, you can contract out. And once you contract out, you can give notice, or you don't have to contract out. There's various ways you can do it, even with leaving the United States. They have ways where you can suspend the social, you can leave the United States, come under certain things that's, you can do certain letters and stuff like that, and put everything, post it in the newspaper and do certain things like that, and show that certain things are suspended, that you can't do this, that all of that stuff is suspended and inactive at this time due to the fact that you have left the jurisdiction. It's ways to do everything. It's all about your ability to understand what you're doing. Do you have the wherewithal? Do you have the knowledge? Do you understand trigger language? Do you understand trigger language in contracts to trigger certain clauses in contracts? Do you have enough of that to um, make these transitions and be able to progress through these things and be able to prove contracts, and then have a institution that will support you, that, like, if you get into a situation where now the institution, based upon the representatives of the head, can come down and say, hold up, wait a minute, we got contracts that verify everything that we're doing. Now we got to shoot to your congressman. We have relationship with these people based upon what we have been doing. And now You can contact certain people and make certain moves and get certain people out of harm's way by understanding how this stuff flows and being able to have the right people, you're working with to be able to enforce what you got going on, and people are not stripping you or subjugating you of your rights when you have these contracts in place.
Got it. Thank you for that. Um, so I have another question as well. Because I know that even from an astrological standpoint and the metaphysical sciences are saying that we are moving into a whole nother world. Even with the monetary system, we're moving into a whole nother world. And with the age of Aquarius that we're coming into, and they're saying also this weekend we have this solar eclipse, that this is like literally the beginning of the fall of the way that the United States used to run things. It's in like a Pluto year. The United States is in its Pluto return. And anybody that knows anything about Pluto is that Pluto, it destroys and rebuilds. And it's in its return, the United States. And so that happens, every, I don't know, is it 250 years or 248 years it happens, but it's a period where it happens, right? So if you think about what happened 250 years ago, there were some things that happened where the United States came into power with something, but now it's being broken down. Something's being broken down, and I believe that a lot of it has to do with this money, where you have like 20 countries saying they're not touching the Federal Reserve notes anymore. And more countries are, saying, hey, we're going to join BRICS. We're going to go back to the gold standard. And so, my question to you is the cryptocurrency. A lot of people have questions about cryptocurrency. We've already addressed the concerns with how to not give up the biometric data and things like that. But my question to you is, how does one get their hands on cryptocurrency safely without touching these Federal Reserve notes? You don't have to go all the way into detail, but how does one actually get the cryptocurrency without having to use or without having to trade the US dollar for that? I'm curious to know what you think about that.
Well, you have to. It's all about contract strategies, and then it's also about understanding your religious rights and how to use the institution to get that certain funds to then fund certain things and projects. Once you understand these strategies, then you can formulate a strategy that now give you the funds you need to create an internal crypto that can be used internally within your institution that's not traded on any public domain or platform, and that it's only can be used within a private area, right, within your institution. So it's many ways to do things. It's just people don't understand how to go about putting stuff together, putting these contracts together, once again, and understanding these tax strategies. Because you got to remember, when we talk about taxes, right? Tax. When I look at tax, I associate everything with a lien. It's a tax lien. You can't use somebody who has a lien on it. 9 times out of 10, there's a fee associated. This is where the fee schedule come in at, because it's a lien on it. You can't use somebody else's. They secure their rights, so that's why it's a security, because somebody's rights is secured in that contract or in that property, and you can't just do anything with it because they have a secured interest, and you cannot remove their interest out of there without paying a penalty or a fee associated with the use of their property.
Hmm. Okay, gotcha. Um, yeah, so people, you have to know how to even get the cryptocurrency because there's a way to do it, how your contracts are formulated and how the religious institution can come in to do it. Because from my understanding, even the ways that we are obtaining the cryptocurrency is also, um, I wouldn't say it can waive religious rights. Is that the term? It can
Yeah,
waive
you
religious
you
rights.
what it is that people are using processes that are corrupted.
Mm,
They're a corrupt process.
there
So
it is.
they're using these things because they don't understand the law. They don't understand the principles of what's going on. So there's a corruption in the process. So they're doing something, then it becomes an illegal process. When
Mm,
all you have to do is you understand these strategies, right, and how to get around that, and then you understand how to then take the money and develop what you're trying to do once you understand these strategies.
gotcha. Gotcha. Okay, I want to play this video for you. This is the world corn video. We talked about this briefly on the last episode, but um, I want to show this to you because you know the founder of Chat GTP or co-founder of Chat GTP is also over this as well, the world coin. Um, well, not co-founder. I want to say he's over Open AI, and that other founder is like connected to Chat GPT, which is also connected to Elon and blah 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 blah. So all this stuff is connected. But I want to go ahead and show you this. They're going to use this for the digital passport, the world digital passport.
People are scanning their eyes in exchange for free money. 2.1 million of them. But here's what's crazy. There are massive lines all around the world waiting for their turn. This is WorldCoin, the wildest social human money experiment ever created. WorldCoin started with a simple vision. What if there was one global financial network owned by everybody on Earth? Unhackable, no corruption, sounds pretty great. But here's where it gets a little dicey for me. In order to make that kind of system, every person needs one unique ID. Think of it like a login that can't be stolen or hacked. And the team decided the best way to do this was to scan your iris, the colored part of your eye. Because other options like Face ID, palm scan, or even email could be hacked or manipulated by AI. So you look into this silver orb and it verifies that you're uniquely you and a human. They call it proof of personhood. In exchange, you're officially verified on the network, and they give you some tokens, currently worth about $50. Call it a sign-up bonus. Now, the idea is if they're able to grow this network with enough proven humans, businesses will start to build for it. You know, like we take MasterCard, Visa, Apple Pay, eyes. In the best case, it could become the new financial rails, like what crypto originally promised, but without the scams. But here's the craziest part where it starts to get a little spooky for me. The co-founder of WorldCoin is Sam Altman. And you might know that name. He's also the co-founder of OpenAI, which made ChatGPT and basically kickstarted this whole AI revolution. He said this, in the future, when AI is super powerful, we're gonna need this. People are scanning their eyes.
All right. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think? I want to know what do you think could be the pros of that and the cons of using such a software like this and how it could take due process away. It can either hurt due process or help due process. What do you think?
Well, first of all, people need to understand when they have these softwares, we got to go back to contract. Is anybody reading the contract before to know what they're giving up, what they're signing up for? You're going to let somebody scan your eye and you don't even know the laws or the contract associated with the laws? You don't have any information before you do anything. You should have enough research on the information involved. We talk about contracts once again, contracts, contracts, and more contracts. So it seems that the ignorance of the people by being introduced to these things and seeming that they going to be secure is based upon AI. What secure people is people honoring their contracts. You know what I mean? People understanding that The world can be a much better place by using intelligence. You know, I think there's a misconception that the world is bad, but I think there is a they're fear mongering to keep people in a certain space so that they can feel safe and not understand their position in life. I think people have lost their concept of self and don't understand that we are the power. We give light to everything. It's only two things that give creation on this planet. It was God, and then there was man. And I think we lost our concept of God, which where we lost our concept of man. And now we're looking for artificial substance to give us more security than our own self. So, uh, you know, it, if you're doing this from a religious standpoint, and somebody got it within the private realm of the institution, and they can say, okay, this is what we're doing, and there's contracts, and everybody had a vote on certain things, and everybody had the right to read these contracts and be educated on these contracts. That's one thing. But when you are things are opened up in the public, and there are vast dimensions and levels to this contract, where we're talking about international agreements to national and domestic agreements and other contractual private rights associated with these agreements through independent contract. You don't know what the uh, extent of what you're giving up or what you're being subjected to in relationship to these things.
Thank you for that. I do have a final question on uh, the current state of the children. It has come out in recent news where they had, I think, over 1,000 children go missing in Ohio. And I saw a video recently where there was a bus that recently just dropped off a whole bunch of kids on a random street with ankle monitors on. Nobody knows where these children came from. There was just a bunch of them with ankle monitors just dropped off in the middle of somewhere. People have been trying to get in contact with, who do these children belong to? Why do they have ankle monitors? Are they dangerous? Are they property? Who knows? But I want to get your opinion on why it's important that we have contracts safeguarded to protect our children against beings that somehow finagle their way into government, finagle their way into independent contracting agencies to get their hands on children. It's no secret that there are some evil beings that have made their way into uh, governments to abuse the power of the government and to get their hands on children. So, how can the religious institution protect a mother's womb before the baby even gets here? What contracts can be set up in place so that um, you know abuse of power can't even be exercised?
Well, this is through membership contracts. The mother can contract and give certain rights to the religious order, where the religious order has a vow to protect those children, and they have jurisdiction over those children um, through many forms, just through contracts. And then through those contracts, what can happen, you set up institutions, right? Like a watchdog institution to ensure, like a protectorate that ensures that these children are protected and their rights and their religious rights cannot be waived. And that and when necessary, the religious order can step in and remove children out of situations that they think is harmful based on contracts. And the parents have to understand that all of these things is through contracts so that we can have safe havens. For example, I'm gonna talk about this. I back in the past, I have helped people understand that when you have children, you need a power of attorney. Why? I had a lady who they took her kids, and through the element of power of attorney, she waived and gave her children to her mother, where she was being prosecuted. And once the children was in the mother's care, and that she relinquished because she hadn't been prosecuted yet of any crime. So even if she go to jail, she decided gave her all her rights over. This is why I talk about the will being one of the most important documents, because if you are incapacitated in any form, you can sign, have a power of attorney, or have other things in place, contracts in place where you designate a person to have the rights over them children. The court can't do nothing because it's already a contract there. So
Mm.
these are things that we're not thinking about because they got us thinking on this individual aspect where we're not doing estate planning, having people around us that we really can trust by setting up these institutions. We have been broken down to under, family has been broken down so much that family is hurting family because we don't know how to thrive, and they're promoting fear mongering where everybody is scared, everybody is frustrated. Family can't make no money because we don't understand the system. It's just like you playing a game of chess or Monopoly. You get frustrated and you lose, and somebody who's very good at it, and they're playing you, and you have little to no experience. And every time you try to move a chess piece, they take it, and and they're calling check, and because you don't have the experience. So this is what we're bringing to the table so that we can have the checks and balances in place as they do, where now we have rights to our own children, and you have an institution that contract in such a way that they're going to protect those children rights at all costs. You understand? And that they're going to restore the family to its whole, the family being whole again, so the family can be protected by the religious order. And our job is to allow people to thrive and understand what their religious rights are, and not to be encroached when it's unnecessary.
Hmm. Yeah. And for those that don't know what that is, look up government encroachment. Look up government encroachment and educate yourself on that terminology. Because when you have religious rights, and you have those contracts set up, that prevents government encroachment on your rights. So get familiar with that term. King, do you have any thing that you want to address? Anything that you want to go over?
Just understanding contracts, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the UCCs. I think it's being misutilized. A lot of people don't know how to contract to make the UCCs a part of their contract and enforce the license holder who have a UCC contract. And then a lot of people are not using UCC insurance on these contracts. So if something go wrong, there's an insurance policy where everybody becomes whole again. I mean, because that's the only thing you can do. It ain't no money. And then we're talking about discharging of debt obligations. And if you understand how to contract and put things in together, you'll know how to be held harmless. You'll know how to hold the insurance. You will know how to be able to discharge the debt through UCCs, through understanding that the license holder has an obligation to honor the UCCs in relationship to this, and how to also um, use where the UCCs can be unenforceable if you understand how to contract too. I didn't get into having the UCCs unenforceable. There's ways to do everything. It's just all about your ability to contract and critically think. You know, we talk about arbitration. I think we might need to do a class and a show on arbitration under the religious order and stuff like that, utilizing that foreign judgment to be able to move and show things and use everything in that manner. and understand the administrative process and understanding thoroughly how to use this, and setting up a protectorate. A lot of people don't know you when they have a trust, you really need a trust protector. Most people have a trust and they don't have a trust protector. So these are some of the things that need to be identified and people need to be educated on to really understand how to maneuver and navigate through this process a little more sophisticated and safely and have their rights safeguarded.
All right, wonderful. So I want to know because I know people have been hitting me up about the religious order. Man, I'm interested in the religious order. I want to be able to assist, Brother King and you. Where can people find you on the web?
We're gonna be. I'm still on Facebook, King L Bay on Facebook. You can hit me up there, Messenger. Um, I also got King L Bay at gmail.com. You also can hit me up there. That's my email. Um, we're going to be putting some things together, and we're going to be showing people once we get the site up. I'm gonna be working with Paige. Me and Paige is going to be doing this. You're going to see us together. We're moving forward with this information, and I'm building the institution. We're going to have an arbitration. We're going to have a Islamic arbitration along with Islamic mission. Like I said, there's several components to this. This is not just a fly by night. I'm not a person that I've been doing this too long to understand this. When you think about everything, this you think of everything in the form of a contract, you will be able to process this a little more proficient. So I thank everybody for listening. Is there any questions that need to be answered from me, Paige?
No, I just had one statement that just to clarify, we did go over this on the first episode. To join the religious order and become a member, you do not have to be Islamic either. We welcome all. We did go over like, okay, you can't harm others or anything like that, but we do welcome all believers in different prophets. So yeah. You all can find me on the web too at Paige Flowers, PAIGEFLWRS on Instagram. And you also can find our YouTube channel, Paige and King, and just type in Slaves to Sovereigns podcast. Well, all right, everybody. So thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate you all. I'm going to go ahead and upload this as soon as possible and join us every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Eastern Standard Time, every Tuesday and every Thursday. Peace and love, and I'll talk to you all soon. Take care.
Thank you.